Welcome to Take Two, a discussion of the times and current events. I'm joined as always by Adam Matlack and Mike Pomerantz. Today, I'd like your take on the $2,000 individual stimulus program that is planned by the administration.
So I look around and I try to figure out which country I'm in. And sometimes when you get dropped into a place, you're at a grocery store, you pretty much know. But man, if you turned on the news today, if you looked at social media today, people talking about what they're going to do with the thousands of dollars that they're just going to be given by the federal government, I have to wonder, where exactly am I? And these questions are just so amazing in terms of where we're going down this line of it's just unprecedented. So much of this is unprecedented. They are printing an exorbitant amount of money that is going to find its way back into the markets. There's no possible way it doesn't. Every time this has ever happened with this massive amount of quantitative easing, these dropping of rates, you see it flow into the markets. And sometimes that can have a very positive effect on the overall, at least psychological situation for most people. But in reality, it really doesn't do a whole lot for everyday people. This stimulus check emergency fund thing that got up from $1,000 to $2,000 for 200 and plus million adults in America, just straight up mail them a check. The numbers would literally be, I think, like probably $400 billion is what it would take to do. It's a drop in the bucket compared to what they've printed. They're probably going to be in repo treasury buys somewhere in the 4 to 7 to 8 trillion dollar range. Will this have more of a psychological effect on than any of that? Absolutely. So there's that. Now, do I think it's a good idea? Or do I think it's right? Or should the government be doing this? Let me put it this way. What's going to happen is, if they do this, they're going to take money that I have earned that they're going to eventually take from me and give it back to me in a check form that then I can then spend again. Is this a plan? It's a plan. It's not a great plan. And is it going to get us anywhere in the long term? Probably not. But will it be a somewhat of a psychological boost for a whole lot of people? Will it score Trump quite a bit of points in the middle? Absolutely. And I got to tell you, I had a conversation with my wife. I was like, hey, what are we going to do with our thousands of dollars that's being airdropped to us? What are we going to do with it? And I think everybody's going to have that conversation. And so, unbelievable times where we're at now.
Yeah, it's an extreme reaction that in part I like and in part I don't like. The the favorable part of it is interesting because it takes a view of humanity and particularly a view of Americans that is very optimistic. I realize that when you follow the money, which we are often instructed to do, the path might not lead to where the proponents of this plan are saying it's going to lead to. But the concept that we will be a stronger people if the money is in the hands of everyone is, that's the America I want to live in. Another positive aspect is that it's more immediate help more quickly. But there's a sugar high that you can't avoid. And I don't know how you temper that. I don't know how you find a middle ground where $1,000 doesn't end up clouding people's understanding of how bad this is and what's going on. In other words, this is aspirin. This is ibuprofen. And, I compare it to, like, why aren't the markets closed? Why don't we close the market? The reason the markets aren't closed is because this has to wash itself out. First of all, the circuit breakers, which it went later today than it has since this nonsense started. The circuit breakers provide a certain measure of confidence to the world. And also, frankly, if you want to I mean, this has been coming for a long time, and we've had this discussion before, Adam, where we talk about maybe it's the straw that breaks the camel's back. I mean, there's a lot of overvalued companies out there. There's been a need for some economic pain on the corporate side for a long time. So you leave the markets open and you let that process, though painful, take its course. The problem is that compassion, which again is an American value that I want to uphold, and capitalism don't always go together. And if you wash out consumers and employees who don't have a rainy day fund, who haven't planned for catastrophe, who are living paycheck to paycheck, and some of them who don't have a real employer, they're part of the gig economy, then it's going to create not just a economic turn down, but a lot of unhappiness that will potentially have a ripple effect and make things worse. So this is a inartful attempt to, and it's only partial, to bring order to chaos. But I also see some positive aspects to it. I just, I mean, the main thing is it's very unfortunate we find ourselves here. And I don't know what else you do. I just think most important thing is that this is not the only part of the solution. All the stuff that's happening with the Fed, we can argue about whether that's good or bad, but at least there is more to this than just the $2,000 airdrops.
So anytime I am thinking about what the government should be doing or not doing, in a perfect world, I'm sitting there thinking they shouldn't be doing it. I don't want them to be doing it. These are the things. These are the realities. If they don't do it well, I'd much rather individuals take care of it. But here's the reality. Government has its hand in everything. It is printing endless amounts of money at this point. And beyond that, it is literally mandating people and mandating businesses across the country, all over the place, not federally yet, but probably will, to not have a job, to not go to work. They've essentially created a vacuum of where 70+% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And if they're going to mandate that people do not work or cannot work, then they've created a scenario where they have to, or in my opinion, have an obligation to fill that need and to make up that gap. So, this is part of the fact that as money begets money, laws and regulation begets regulation. This is a reality. When you live in this massively modified free market economy, the reality is that you have to keep putting laws in place, as one law affects something and has all these unattended effects afterwards, these ripple effects. And they're like, oh, Band-Aid, 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 Band-Aid. This is merely just another Band-Aid on a huge series of massive miscalculations that cannot be corrected by the free market because we don't have one. And so as we sit here now, if we're giving away money, if we're going to print money, I want it to go to the taxpayers. That's where I want it to go. So I don't love it, but psychologically, I think, and from a political position, it makes a ton of sense. Both of those are big score points. From a philosophical standpoint, I don't think it fixes anything. And I think it just shows our addiction to spending as a nation as a whole as well. And so I truly hope that one day the drop, when it truly happens, I hope it doesn't hurt as bad, given the fact that we literally can't go a couple weeks without tightening it up and riding this out. Instead, we have to print trillions and trillions of dollars and give money away that isn't even ours, that's literally bankrupting our future kids. And so I hope it's worth it.
Richard, if we can maybe just go a little bit longer, I want to ask Adam, because this touches on some of the things we talked about before, but and I think there may be a time and place for this. But Adam, I wanted to get your reaction, and I think this is already a day or two old, so it might be stale. But Elon Musk was having kind of a different reaction than places like Amazon and Google and Twitter, where everybody was sent home really early, Musk sent a message to his employers like, I'm going to be at work. I'll be working. And he's a guy who would, add up the numbers, say, I'm not likely to get sick, sleep at the factory and just keep working and working and working and working. And on the one hand, like we talk about the public-private partnership that's sort of, I don't know, I think it might work. I mean, I was a little skeptical at first, but it's starting to look like it may be the right way to go. But I think eventually, and I want to get your reaction, eventually you're going to need somebody to say like, look, we got to get back to work. Enough of this laying around feeling bad about ourselves. We got a job to do. And to do it in a way that's not necessarily the most compassionate or the most touchy-feely. And although I'm not sure about the timing of Musk's comment, he may have already circled back on that, sending all his people home, whatever. But I do think at some point, hopefully really soon, that sentiment is going to be valuable. And I wanted to get your reaction to that.
There has to be the perennial, like the idea of I'm going to yell at the storm. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to scream, and you can do your worst to some degree. America's full of doers. We talk about it a lot in small group settings and in person-to-person conversations, whereas the narrative is that there's a ton of people on welfare, people are hurting, all these things is somewhat the narrative. But in many ways, America's full of these unbelievably resilient people who are capable of doing and overcoming great things. And so I think Musk's take is correct. I think some point you have to bear down. They're smart decisions, right? I know of multiple companies that are going to an alternating A/B in-house one week and out-house the other. So what they're doing is that they're working from home for 1 week, and that's group A, and then these group B's working from work that week, and then they're switching to try to at least protect half their workforce, right? And they're doing all these things. This is smart decisions. This is what happens when you're actually making informed decisions about, hey, let's worry about our business and our personnel health and what we can do to limit exposure and to protect ourselves and to protect our community. And so work is necessity. It's necessary, right? We have to keep working. We can't just all stop. We can't just print the dollars endlessly and just pay for it and send it all out. So to a lot, I agree with you. Like, I mean, we just have to get back to work. It can't be, this long solution where now school's dismissed for over a month and a half. This is already a problem for many people who weren't planning for it. I'm happy about it because homeschool is back, baby. Yeah, and it's the way it should be. And so, I mean, in so many cases, in so many scenarios, you sit back and you want things to be done for you. And a lot of Americans have been trained and kind of hammered that thought, but the only people who are going to fix this is us. And we need to be smart at social distancing and smart in those social scenarios, but I don't think we should suspend work at all.
Okay, thank you guys.
Keep yelling at the storm.
Keep yelling at the storm. At some point, it's do your worst, right? So do your worst. Screw on. Let's keep going.
All right, that's all the time we have today. Thank you both for your thoughts. If you enjoyed our video, please be sure to like and subscribe below and join us for the next edition of Take Two.